October was a bit of unintentional slowing down, which probably meant that was exactly what I needed for the month. It actually started off a little bit crazy because we went out of town to Chicago, which I've actually never been to Chicago, despite living in the Midwest for a good 8-9 years, something like that. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of stuff going on. We went with the kids to the Field Museum, got to see all the cool stuff there, met Sue, who my nephew is just like absolutely obsessed with. And it was a really cool, exciting little trip. And then we drove down to southern Indiana. I think it took us about 6 hours to make the drive. And we got to visit with his family down there for a couple of days. And then it was back in the car, driving back up to Chicago, staying the night, and then finally flying home. It was a very long time to leave the puppies. It was a very whirlwind trip. And while it was really fantastic to see everybody, I wouldn't so much call it a vacation, especially since I got sick like immediately after coming home. So I don't actually feel like I got any rest during that time. And I'm not sure I actually recovered from sort of that burnout energy. But here we are, and I had to keep pressing forward. So I kind of started to do a slow roll back in, which is kind of where I'm getting at. So I kind of threw out the whole idea of like having any sort of plan or schedule for the last half of October. I really just wanted to kind of like sit with my energy level the way it was, sit with my muse wherever she happened to be. So we're going to jump into this pile of stuff I have here. If you're just looking for the tarot decks, we'll talk about that in sort of the next section. There'll be timestamps below if you want to jump ahead. Otherwise, let's jump on into this stack of things I have here, because this was kind of where this rolling into this unintentional slow month started. And I say that knowing that I have this giant stack of things here on my desk. So let's just scoot those aside and we'll talk about kind of what my daily schedule looked like a little bit during the latter half of October. I kind of did some different stuff with my journaling and my planning a little bit throughout the end of October, some of which I'm carrying forward into November, maybe even into next year. I can't even go down the rabbit hole of planner stuff right now for 2026. I did buy 2 planners. I talked about it in my coffee and cards in my membership, and my complete and utter overwhelm with the idea of setting up a new planner. I don't know why my brain just is like, no, thank you. Like, we need to get through this year. I still have things to finish up this year. So my brain is absolutely refusing to focus on anything about 2026 beyond the stuff that I'm doing in my membership, because that is stuff that I'm having to develop now. I just kind of ended up jumping into these 3 books here. This one I'll talk about just really quickly because I'm actually not going to show anything inside of it. I'll show you some blank pages. It is just a Hobonichi Techo. This is the A6, and it is a daily page journal. Now, I bought this originally because I thought I wanted to do some daily pages. I think I did some daily pages in here. And then what this ended up being for me is kind of like a health tracker, where I started tracking things that I was eating, things, how I was feeling, symptoms I was having, things like that. And a lot of it is just stuff that is very related to that, or like how I was feeling mentally or whatever. So we're not actually going to look at the pages because it actually goes quite personal. I have discovered that daily stuff, if it has too much of a structure, actually doesn't work for me, which is kind of funny. And I suppose really not all that surprising if you've been here for a hot minute and kind of have seen how my chaotic brain works. As I've mentioned many times, I need absolute order and structure in my daily life, but my brain needs chaos. Like it is chaos. So it needs to be able to function in its chaotic way, but I need the rest of me to be very calm and quiet and ordered and structured, and it's a whole thing. Anyway, this got very overwhelming very fast. So now what I'm doing is I only jump in here when I'm having symptoms, basically, or when something's feeling off. And I'm hoping that that will probably track, and I'll be able to see where some things, like there's always a thing around my period, right? It's just I'm perimenopausal, and so that's just a whole thing. And so I'm tracking some of that in there. That's how I kind of realized that I was actually getting sick, like actual proper sick, because, you know, I'm playing and traveling and all that. I was proper sick for like a little over a week, I think. And anyway, tracking stuff in here, I'm just doing whenever I feel like I need to. So it doesn't even sit on my desk. It sits with some of my other like occasional journals or planners off to the side, so I don't feel the need to get into it every day. If it's here on my desk, if it's in my working space, I feel the need to touch it every day. And sometimes that's a good thing and sometimes it's not. So using this whenever I need to, just for tracking health, wellness, and whatnot. So what I started doing through the latter half of October, and again, because personal, I'm not going to actually get into the pages in here. Maybe just so you can see, like it's just writing. It's just writing. There's nothing in here. I think I did stamp this just because I was going to write daily pages in here. That is the only decorative thing in this whole journal. This is an B6. This is a B6 Stology. I love Stologies. They have like my favorite paper. I decorated this cover like a while ago. I was like, y'all, I needed a Stology in my life and I just wanted to decorate it. So I did. And I put it in a plastic cover and I had no idea what I was going to do with it. And it just sat there for a while. And now what I'm doing with it is every morning, I should say most every morning, I sit down with my cup of coffee and the first thing I do is brain dump into this. And I'm just calling it morning pages. And I know I've talked about morning pages in terms of writing, and that's a different kind of thing. That's when I'm doing like jump right into fiction writing or nonfiction writing, whatever the case may be. This is journaling. This is personal. It is still writing, but writing for me versus journaling, two very different things. So I call this journaling. That's writing. It's how my brain works. Sometimes it's a page, sometimes it's 3 or 4, just depends whatever it is that I need to get out of my brain. Sometimes I kind of like trail off into to-do lists. There's a couple of little journal entries in here that actually have like to-do lists. And then I just transfer those because it was in my mind. I was thinking about it. So valid. So I've been starting my day with that. And then I just, I go into my weeks. I've been in this since halfway through the year. So I think I started in June. And before that, I was in a cousin's. There's a whole video on my complete and utter meltdown with the cousins. It is way too much space. I'm having the same issue with some of the stuff I have for 2026, if I'm being perfectly honest about it. And so I've just been, getting in here and doing my stuff. I have, videos that I'm making and my task list. This is September. Not even paying attention to where we are in the planner. So sometimes it's like memory keeping. So here was the week that we were into Chicago and some of the things that we did. I didn't even finish filling out like what we did. This is like my little ticket from the Field Museum. And yeah, this has just been great to come back into this. This is when I started getting sick. So I just took some, made a little note about that. This entire week I took off just for strictly fiction writing. So I didn't do anything else besides play games with my bestie and work on my book. So then going into the last week here, which is actually when I'm recording this. So I still have several things that I need to do this week. And I have, stuff on my checklist and I have notes in here and whatnot. And then back here, I've started doing sort of just like daily logging. And it's like real simple. I just write the day and a few things that I need to get done. I've been keeping these lists very, very simple because again, I get really overwhelmed really quickly. Okay, I do have one other journal, but we're gonna circle back to this because this is also tarot and it's kind of bridge the gap for us here. I am still also working on my bird by bird. I have a whole video on this. I'll just leave a link for that below if you want to check it out. Like I am annotating, I am slow reading, I am doing all the things with this book. It's been really, really fun. I've really enjoyed it. This is a book that I've read many, many times. So like this time I'm really just focusing in on the important things that I want to remember. So that's still hanging around because I'm still doing that. Again, whole other video on that. And then I've been dipping in and out of some fiction books, but I haven't finished anything. The one that I have been kind of more consistently reading is this October Shadows, and this is classic ghost stories for Halloween, selected and illustrated by John A. Rice. John A. Rice did the Mindscape Tarot, which I also have here, which I'll be talking about more next month because it is on my list to work with next month. I have been really enjoying this book. I saw it on his Instagram. And like, it's beautiful. And the thing I love about this in a book like this, like the illustrations are gorgeous, is that I can just jump in and out of this. It's got some great, fan favorite stories in here. And then there's some that like I've never heard of. So it's been really fun to get in here and to kind of just dip in and out of this book. The stories are, digestible. I can read them in a, decent amount of time. It doesn't require the commitment of a full-length novel, which again, I have several that I'm reading, but also because I'm writing them, it's just really hard for me to commit to that. I think I mentioned to somebody the other day, like it's really hard for me to be in other characters and then still like writing my own, because my own characters like live in my head. Something like this is great because when I want to read, but I don't want to like commit to like a full blown, 500-page fantasy or even like a little smut book or whatever. And I just can't with other people's characters for right now. And it's nothing against other people's characters. It's just my characters are living in my head and they get kind of pissy when I don't pay attention to them. So something like this is amazing because I can just jump in here and I can take a little bit of time off and I can read. And I kind of been pairing it with one of my decks. Even though this is like the October shadows, right? I feel like this is a book I would read anytime. Like I love ghost stories, and I was talking about it in my member space. Like I actually love horror books. I do not love horror movies. I do play horror games, but only with my husband because otherwise I get scared. And but I love horror books. It's a great one to just like jump into anytime. It's not like it won't be just an October thing. It's great in October, but like honestly, like spooky season like can be like all year. So I think it was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. It's absolutely a stunning book, and it's been like the perfect like bite-sized little fiction for me, especially with all the other things that I have going on. I love journaling and I love tarot journaling, but like when my plate gets so full that I just like, I can't keep up with any sort of regular structure, sometimes having multiple journals for multiple things actually is a detriment to my practice. Most of the time I love it. And I'm by all means not getting rid of any of my dedicated books, my dedicated journals. Like I have my secret tarot journals, I have tarot journals for deity, things like that. Those are absolutely staying and I still work in them. But sometimes I get really overwhelmed by all the different journals and I just need like one book. So I bought a pack of these cheap field books. They're not even the like name brand. They're like, like Elan Publishing is its own thing, but like it's not field notes, right? Because I couldn't find field notes in A5. I wanted something that felt, this is gonna sound really bad, but felt cheap. Something that didn't feel precious, that I could just get into it, do what I want with it and not worry about it. It's not a beautifully bound journal. It's not a dedicated book for a certain thing. It's just my everything journal. So I had a blast doing this because going into it with the idea and the framework of it's just going to be an everything journal, and I'm just going to put whatever moves me in the moment in here. No rules, no structure. You'll see that there is a little bit of everything in here. It was so freeing, and it just allowed me to jump in here and do like whatever I wanted whenever I wanted. And the fact that it's in like this cheap little notebook just means that I was not precious at all about what I did, and that was so freeing. I really, really enjoyed the process of it. Basically what I did was I got into my scrap bin of like papers and whatnot, and I just grabbed a handful. Luckily, most of my stuff tends to sit in the same aesthetic, but I literally just grabbed a handful of stuff, threw it down on the table and was like, this is what I'm working with. Like occasionally I did get up because something would like, I'd have a thought and then I'd occasionally get up and get something. But for the most part, I just worked with whatever was on my desk. And there's something like very freeing in that because I didn't even have to think about it. I was listening to music, like I'll insert some footage, of course, because I did record some of me working in here, but like there's no audio because I didn't even plug my microphone in. I was just recording. I was listening to my music. There was at one point I was talking to Lisa while I was inking pages. And like, it was just such a great experience to just kind of step away from all of the preconceived notions I personally have about journaling, like stuff I put on myself. These are rules I made up for myself. And so I can break the rules because I made the rules. So it was really wonderful to just jump in here and just do whatever on the page. So I called it my everything journal because that's exactly what it is. So into the first page, I kind of just did this little like sort of like an invocation, I guess, or maybe a dedication of like, this just is what it is. Like, it's just whatever moves me in the moment. And then I did a little like sticker collaging with some stamps because I love that. And then I included this little quote here from Ella Hicks. I don't even know where I found this. It was just one of those things that's in my camera roll. I've talked about moving stuff out of my camera roll into my commonplace journal. That's definitely something I'm still doing, but occasionally a few things ended up in here. If you want to see more about my commonplace journaling, I'll leave a link to that below because that is still a thing that I'm totally doing whenever I get the chance to. I love it. It's so much fun. But I included a little bit of that in here because the whole point of this is to actually be my everything journal. So I included this little quote that said, "The first half of life is about becoming who you needed to be to survive. The second half is about unraveling everything that no longer aligns with your soul's purpose. It's not a midlife crisis, it's a rebirth." And I just absolutely love that sentiment because I feel like that's 100% where I am right now. And it's great and it's scary and it's freeing and it's crazy, but I am really enjoying stepping into that, just being who I am, you know, authentically, unapologetically, most of the time, being myself. And it's been really free because now I'm at this point where I'm still discovering who I am, right? And some of the things that like I thought I was leaving behind, I'm not, and some of the things I'm bringing back in, and some things I am walking away from. So it's been really wonderful to really just kind of honor that, sink into that, and let that just be a part of my life and my everyday. So I also did a tarot reading. There's a couple of readings in here. I didn't do a ton in terms of structured tarot in October. I kind of just pulled cards whenever I felt the need to. So I have, of course, just some little collaging and a little picture of my reading, and then just writing down, you know, my kind of thoughts and feelings about the reading. Nothing super huge. I didn't want to have anything be really big or overwhelming or feel very complicated. I needed a bit of the simplicity and I needed a bit of the messy, if I'm being perfectly honest. Like, I just needed to be okay with that. And, you know, most of the time I am. But some days, like, I get up in my head about, like, oh, it's supposed to be this way or look this way, or everybody else is doing it this way, so I should too. And that just really doesn't work for me. So I'm trying to honor that. And, like, here is a perfect example of me honoring what should and shouldn't be in a journal, because I specifically created this spread to be like I do my own thing and, like, don't tell me what to do kind of a vibe, which is... it's a little bit of my inner teenager rebellious energy coming through, which actually comes through quite a bit these days. So then we move into another tarot reading that I did. This was a fairly big one, like one of the bigger ones that I did through the month, because I had cards and dice, and it was just funny because the whole reading was about what to connect to, what to disconnect from. And it was just a great like reminder that, like, again, that sort of energy, like I was talking about, like I need things to be nice and calm and quiet around me, but then my brain is utter chaos and I need to just lean into that. So that was a great little reading that I did. Again, just some collaging here on the page. And again, kind of, I'm trying to get back to that idea of like the art portion of it is part of the reading. And I really, really enjoy that process. It just creates this multi-layered experience for me because I'm doing the tarot, I'm working with the cards, I'm working with the dice, I'm working with the messages, but then I'm also working with the art and what I create here on the page in my journal. And it's just such a rich, multi-layered experience. It's not something I can do every day though. And that's definitely something that I have had to come to terms with and sort of remind myself that I can do this when I have the time and the energy, but it's not an everyday thing. And that's kind of one of the things I really love about this everything journal is I just do it when and how I feel like it. And then I think the last page I even have in here for the month, so not very many, is just actually some journaling, like just some kind of brain dump word flow thing. I did some paper collaging around it, and that was pretty much it. And that's it. And I will pick up here in November with whatever it is that I decide to put in here. And I am really loving the freedom and the flexibility of just letting this be whatever. And like, I cannot stress enough the whole idea of doing it in this cheap ass notebook. which like sounds terrible. Like it's fine. It's fine. I know people who journal in these all the time, but when you're used to journaling in, I don't even have one at hand, but when you're used to journaling in like, you know, fancy paper and hardbound and ribbons and all of that, when you're used to journaling in that, this feels like a cheap piece of shit. But honestly, my whole approach with this has completely changed because it's a cheap piece of shit. And I'm like, I can put whatever I want in here. I can put my comfort celebrities in here. I can put my readings in here. I can just journal, quotes, whatever. And it's fantastic. And I really love that. I encourage everybody to do this, to have a everything journal. Like it's fine to have all the dedicated notebooks and journals. I love that. Those aren't going anywhere in my practice. They are an important part of it, but sometimes I just need the everything journal where it's just whatever it is that I want it to be in the moment. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into the decks that I worked with. Now, if you're in my membership and you watched my last month, like the decks I was going to work with, I think I had more pulled out, maybe. I might have. These were the ones that I actually ended up working with. So it's really just like 5, I guess, technically. So let me go ahead and get them out and we'll talk about, you know, what I did with these, which kind of was just going with the flow, like whatever I felt like doing. I did end up kind of pairing them in this way. This little one kind of just went in between. So I'll talk about the pairings, I guess, because that's kind of, you know, it just kind of happens in my practice. I know I have shown this pair many times before. This is the Lost Oracle, and like y'all, honestly, this is kind of becoming one of my favorite little oracles. There's something about the illustrations, the imagery, like the color palette, I absolutely love. It just has like, it's got a great keyword, and then it's got just these little like messages at the bottom. And I have just found this deck to be like really flexible and just a great one to throw. It works with so many of my decks. I could have thrown it with any deck that I have picked out for this month, and I think it would have worked just fine. But it feels like fairy tale, and folklore, and just all the wonderful things just kind of all mixed together. It kind of feels like stepping into a storybook, but like a grown-up storybook, not a kid's version. And I just really love it. And I know I've shown this pairing before and y'all are probably sick of it, but I am not bringing in that many decks into my collection anymore. I talked about it in my last Coffee and Cards and member space where I was just like, I got overwhelmed. I got really, really overwhelmed. So my collection really isn't growing, which means I'm working with the decks that I already have, which means we're going to see a lot of repeats. But there's value in that, right? Because the more I use a deck, the more I learn about it, the more I understand it, the better I'm able to read with it. So I paired this with the Cursed Auguries. I apologize, I do believe this deck is out of print. It does come back in occasionally. Fair warning, this deck does have like nails through hands and spiders and things of that nature in it. So if that is triggery for you, please feel free to skip ahead because I'm not gonna like try to take all those cards out. This is a pip deck, and yeah, I love a good pip deck. There's something about working with the pip deck that is so freeing. I know I've talked about it at length. I need to do like a proper how I read with pip decks video. Tegan and I did talk about it in one of our Tarot Beyond Traditions because we both love a good pip deck. I will leave a link for that below if you haven't checked it out yet. And it's just such a freeing way to read, especially if you don't necessarily read RWS. It's a great way to kind of step outside of that. Now you can absolutely read RWS with a pip deck and that's amazing and it works great. But this allows me to kind of get away from that and read in a way that's a little bit more numerological and elemental, which is my baseline for reading. These two decks together are just absolute perfection. Just 100% perfection. I love them. Again, I know I've shown it so many times, but I just really love the simplicity of working with a pip deck and then having a little bit more of that robust imagery coming through, the kind of bigger, more energetic messages coming through my oracle deck. I feel like when I pair an oracle with a pip deck, the oracle weighs heavier. It means more, it carries more weight, it anchors the reading in really well. And then the pip deck itself really becomes the expanded vocabulary of the oracle. So if we have the stag with ride between the realms, between the 8 of Pentacles and the King of Cups. The Eight of Pentacles and the King of Cups then become sort of the language of the stag here. It's kind of what that card is talking about. And I go further into like what that means to me in the moment and how do I relate to that. It's really hard for me to do like sample readings. I know I've talked about it many times before because I have to have some sort of personal connection because I don't actually read professional and I don't read for others. That is definitely not a strong suit of mine. And I only really know how to read the cards for myself. I mean, could I read for others? Sure. I do know how to read the cards, but my forte is definitely not in reading for others. It's more about using the cards to understand and unearth my own inner voice and my own language. And a deck like this just really opens up for that. And it really allows me to get into this. I'm going to try to do it. Pull the Lost card and choose joy as your compass. So I would look at this and go, where am I currently feeling lost? What am I feeling lost about? Maybe I look to the other cards around it to tell me where I'm feeling lost. And I could pull more cards and bring like more, maybe I have 4 tarot and maybe I bring in another oracle or whatever. However much I need to understand the message coming through for me in this moment. Like we've got this Knight of Wands. So I'm in my feeling lost in like where I need to be putting my energy, what direction I need to be going. And I've got the Judgment over here. So maybe that's telling me that all of those expectations, all of those things that I think I should be doing are actually taking me off of my path of what I should be doing, which is following like that soul work. It's always going to come back to that for me, I think, because that's like the majority of what I do and where my work sits. I do occasionally do readings about family stuff or about relationships, things like that. But for the most part, a lot of my readings really focus on around what I'm doing in terms of my own personal growth work, in terms of my spiritual work, or in terms of my creative work. Those tend to be where I sit with a lot of my readings. And that's probably because those are the things I struggle with the most. So it's where I need the most help. So it makes sense that I feel like that's where I would, focus my efforts and the messages that are going to come through for me. And a deck like this just really opens it up, and I really love working with it together. I feel like it really allows me to kind of dig deeper into what's going on for me personally, because I'm not so distracted by like a whole full scene on the card. Sometimes a full scene is great, but other times when I'm like, okay, I've got the Hearth here with Broaden Your Horizons and the Six of Wands. This is a very pippy card. So I have to really think about what that Six of Wands means to me in this moment, because there is no scene to guide me. It's more about the number 6 and the energy of the wands. Now I can look at the placement of the pips on the card and see, they are all in alignment. They're all different, but they are all in alignment and they're in 2 rows, and there is messaging to be found in that. But it is a different energy than having sort of our traditional Rider-Waite-Smith Six of Wands, where I've got a visual sort of guideline, a picture that guides me to a certain idea or a certain message, where this is completely open to whatever it is that's going on in my life at the moment. And I really love that freedom. So then kind of on the flip side of that, which is kind of interesting, is this Zombie Tarot. This is one of my favorite decks. It really, really is. And I paired it with, y'all, I can never remember the name of this deck. It is either Beyond the Worlds or Between the Worlds. It's the little deck that I have modified. So let's talk about the zombies first. I know I've talked about my zombies a million times. I love this deck. I don't just pull it out during spooky season. I mean, it's perfect for spooky season, but I pull this deck out anytime I need to tap into this cheeky energy, because for me, this deck is so much fun. It is so cheeky. It is so clever. I really love the depictions. You can see here, where I was talking about Pip deck versus fully scenic minor, right? Where we've got this Page of Swords technically as a core, but still in the minor arcana. There's a definite scene going on here. It's a definite mood, right? There's imagery, there's messaging that's coming through this versus just having, I keep pulling cards, just having 5 you know, things on the card or whatever. And it's such a great one. I love this deck. It's so much fun. Anytime I feel like I'm taking myself or my work or my life too seriously, this is one of the decks I pull out. I have edged mine, like I edged it long time ago. And then I was pulling these cards with it. And if you saw the journal portion of this video, you saw at least one of them that I did. I did not record every single reading that I did in a journal this month. And that was also freeing too. Some of them I just let live in the moment. I have pictures in my phone in case I want to like look back on it. But I just, for the most part, let the majority of my readings just be what they were in the moment. And I didn't actually record the majority of them. And I enjoyed that. There was freedom in that. This is another deck that I've modified, so I've edged it. But then also, I've shown this one a million times before. There are keywords in this guidebook. So I took the keywords. There's two primarily, I think like a light and shadow, and I literally stamped them on the card because the titles do nothing for me mostly. Like, I don't really know what a jawbone means or a short bone. I don't even know where a short bone is. I absolutely love the aesthetic. I love the sort of found objects energy of this deck, but I couldn't work with it without keywords because I didn't know what these things were. So having said all that, I stamped it on there, and I know I've shown this like many times now. It's really tall. I don't know that it really matters when we're top down, but I'm gonna shorten it anyway. So one of the ways that I like to work with this little combo together, like my favorite way to work with it, is to actually put the oracle in the center and then work with those two keywords. So I would have support. So where am I looking for support? I've got this 5 of hazards. Maybe I'm not finding any sort of support right now, and that's the problem. And I've got this collapse over here with this 4 of cups. This is a very dark reading. Very dark, because we've got like this couple here, and like this feels like there's maybe some sort of disconnect going on in the support system at home. We've had some struggles with adjusting to having a kid move back home again, and another dog. It's really been the dogs just trying to adjust and sort of, you know, reestablish their own little pact within our pack. And it's just kind of funny because that's just sort of what came to mind for me, like right from the get-go. But I really enjoy working with them in this way. Like we have the child with justice and the adult with the 5 of cups. This deck, I feel like this deck is like literally calling me out right here on camera for the whole freaking world to see, because that is what it does. It calls me out. It is like not gonna shy away from the hard truths, but it really does so in this like kind of funny, cheeky, supportive way that I really enjoy. It's like, okay, shit's hard, like I get it, and you're being really dramatic about it right now, but you will survive. And I feel like that's what this deck does. Like it's so dramatic, like dramatic to the extreme, and it just kind of reminds me that sometimes I'm being overly dramatic about things, and that doesn't always necessarily serve me when I'm like working through something. And you can see like I'm kind of ignoring, I guess, a little bit what it is, right? It's the doll's leg. But really, what does that mean? That means mobility or immobility. And we've got mobility with the Fool and immobility with the 10 of hazards. And it works really well. I really enjoy these together. Another thing that I've been doing, which I've talked about, I think, in other videos, is kind of using also this little secret pocket. This is the Mildred Paynes. This is the teeny tiny one. I think there's a full-size one. I really love this teeny tiny one. I've been using it. I've actually been really surprised by how much I love this little deck. It's really been fantastic. It's just got like these simple little illustrations and just the title. Now, this is a great example of a deck that like it just has a title. There's no keyword, but I know what these things are and I know what they mean to me, right? I know what a pipe is. And then again, I go into like my own very personal associations. Like whenever I see a pipe, it makes me think of my grandfather because he smoked a pipe when I was a kid, and like that pipe smell, like it's just a thing. The ladder, the devil, the spider, mushroom, like I know what these things are. They're not so far outside of my realm of understanding, which some of these things like a doll's arm. I mean, sure, I can, I know what a doll's arm is, but like, what does it mean in a divinatory sense? Like, how do I make sense of that? So one of the things I've enjoyed doing, and just see here if I can make some sense of this, is using these as, I call them like punctuation. Let me just pull a card here. Okay, so we've got the acorn with growth and decay. Cool, cool. I actually do know what the acorn means to me. That's one of those rare ones that it actually means something. So then I'm looking at that going, okay, so I have growth and decay. So let me just pull the stack here and pull a card. So I'm going to pull a card for growth. So we've got some growth going on in this Two of Swords situation. So maybe there's some growth happening in terms of a decision being made, things of that nature. And over here we have decay in the Ace of Wands. So that's really interesting because I'm feeling like that Ace of Wands is like, that's that soul work, like you're grabbing hold of like the marrow and the bone and the thing that makes you who you are. But there's decay here. Like you're not actually doing the work maybe. And then so what I'm going to do is actually pull another card down here to kind of see what I can do to bridge those. We've got the Eight of Cups. So maybe like there's some stuff I need to leave behind. Cool, cool. Now let me see where all of this connects. So I'm going to use these like a punctuation, like a comma, like a period, like an exclamation point. Depends on where I put them and how I interpret them as to what kind of a punctuation they are. But we're going to use them as probably commas today. So I'm going to put a comma. So we have the Two of Swords with the iceberg between the Two of Swords and the Eight of Cups. So there's something going on here beneath the surface, beneath this Two of Swords that is not allowing me to access this Eight of Cups, right? Because I feel like the iceberg is like, stop, no, wait, look at what's going on beneath that. What's happening here in this Eight of Cups? How am I going to get from this Two of Swords to the Eight of Cups? So I would look at that and I would kind of work with that energy, work with that idea. And then I'm going to use a comma here between my Eight of Cups and my Ace of Wands. And I've got the umbrella, which is funny because I live in the Pacific Northwest and most of us do not use umbrellas here, even though it rains all the time. So if we're pulling out an umbrella, if I'm pulling out an umbrella, my own personal association is, holy shit, it is pouring. Like it is like torrential downpour because we don't pull out an umbrella for just any little rainstorm. This is shit getting real. And so between this Eight of Cups and this Eight of Wands, if everything is like, this is where the getting real is, there's this torrential downpour that's maybe creating this decay over here. And I'm just, again, I'm looking at this through my own personal lens. There's so much like kind of coming down on top of me that I can't connect to this Ace of Wands energy right now. So I need to leave that behind. So I'm going to look at this all as one big reading. I'm using these little cards to sort of punctuate, to kind of create a connection point between this Two of Swords and this Eight of Cups, because this is my growth work over here. Two of Swords with the iceberg leading to the Eight of Cups. Then I'm going to go up here into this decay. So this Eight of Cups, all of this stuff coming down, leaving that behind, gets me to this Ace of Wands. That will stop that decay happening over there. And so that's kind of how I'm interpreting this reading. And I could keep adding and I could keep going. And that's one of the things that I definitely like to do. It's really fun with this deck because I've got sort of this sort of conversation going on over here. And if I wanted to, I can kind of keep going. So let's see what happens. If I pull more cards, I've got the Judgment. So again, I could keep going here with adding another card, maybe adding another comma here. Maybe this one actually feels more like a period, and that's the end. So I've got this Eight of Wands. I need to release the Judgment, drop the big bomb. And I'm not sure entirely what pop it means in this situation, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, because I'm pulling this all out just random in the moment. This feels to me like this is all the things that everybody else is putting on us. So like that's the bomb we need to drop. We need to let that go. Stop putting all this stuff on me. Stop sticking pins in me, because I need to be focusing on this Eight of Wands here. And I could keep going, right? And this is kind of one of those conversational readings. I kind of just feel it out in the moment, which is why I kind of like to refer to these as like punctuations in my readings. And I have a couple of mini decks that I use this for. Mini decks are great for that. And it becomes a conversation because I'm kind of creating a sentence, which means I can keep going. It can be one sentence that leads into a paragraph that leads into a whole story if I wanted to. And I really love that freedom and flexibility and that sort of way of reading a little bit more narratively, but I'm also still, looking for those messages, what it does it mean for me in the moment. How does that make me feel? What am I learning through this experience? And these three really together have been absolutely fantastic. I've really enjoyed it. And this little secret pocket oracle, like I want more of these, like in different vibes. That's my goal. So if you know of other little mini decks like this in different sort of aesthetics and vibes, definitely let me know in the comments below, because I'm definitely on the hunt for these, because they make amazing little additions to my reading. I did use them some with the Lost Oracle and the Cursed Auguries as well, and they work fantastic for that too. In addition, I used what I call my little bone dice here, and they are not real bone. They're plastic. They're just painted to look like bone. Always my favorite dice to use with my zombies, and it's just a great one to have on hand. It's one of my favorite sets. It was a little indie set. I think they're sold out now. If I can find a link, I'll leave it below, but I'm sure there's others that are similar to it. So that's all the things that I worked with and got up to in October of 2025. As always, you'll find links for everything I can link to in the description box below. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me. I hope that you had a wonderful October, and I wish you many blessings moving into November.